everybody, welcome to my channel Programming Guide by Bhargavi. So in this video I am going to explain you the operating system and complete syllabus of the operating system for the last minute preparation for your academic exams. సో ఇక్కడ ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేసే నేను నోట్స్ అనేది నేను యూజీసీ నెట్కి ప్రిపేర్ అవుతున్నాను, దానికోసం ప్రిపేర్ చేసుకున్న నోట్స్. మేబీ ఇది స్టూడెంట్స్కి యూస్ఫుల్ అని అవుతుంది నాకు అనిపించింది, సో అందుకే ఈ వీడియో తీసి మీతో షేర్ చేయాలని అనుకుని షేర్ చేస్తున్నాను. ఓకే, ఇఫ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ యూస్ఫుల్ ప్లీజ్ లైక్, షేర్ అండ్ సబ్స్క్రైబ్ టు మై ఛానల్. సో లెట్స్ స్టార్ట్ ద కాన్సెప్ట్. Here first we need to know what is mean by operating system. So operating system is a collection of programs that programs enables the user and hardware interact with each other. That means what? Here operating system is an intermediary between user applications and the computer hardware. Like it is an interface between user and hardware. Whatever the things for the user need, those will be given to the operating system. Operating system will give that instructions to the hardware and hardware will respond according to the instructions of the operating system. Operating system plays the main role in the system. Now we see the some of the services of the operating system. So in this video only I am explaining with a short explanation only. This is only for the last minute preparation. So first we'll see the services of the operating system. So the first service of the operating system is program execution, handling of input output operation, manipulation of file system, error detection and handling, resource allocation, accounting, information and resource protection. All these are the services of the operating system. Now we see the system call. What is meant by a system call? So it is a way of program to interact with the kernel of the operating system. So your operating system contains a kernel. Operating system directly gives the instructions to the kernel. Kernel will interact with the hardware. It provides the services to the users through API. So API is nothing but application program interface. These are the entry points into the kernel system. So whatever the instruction you want to give to the hardware, we have some of the predefined system calls. With the help of those system calls we can give the instructions to the hardware. So what we'll see, what are the system calls. So we have some of the system calls for process control, file manipulation, device management, information management, communication and protection. So in a Unix we'll create process or fork, exit, wait for signals and wait for operation. So like this we have some different kinds of system calls in Windows and in Unix. Now we'll see how the operating system is defined, that means designed. Now operating system and design implementation, right? Operating system is a construct that allows the user application to interact with the system software. Now look here first we have kernel. Out of that we have main memory. So main memory after input output devices. Next user interface. Now what is the designing of this operating system? Here we have user goals as well as the system goals. So in a user goals we have that convenient to use, easy to learn and fast. Whereas the system goals are what? Engineer requirement is there, easy to design, error free, upgrade and reliable. So what are the mechanisms and policies we have? So mechanisms and policies are nothing but how the operating system will be implemented and what are the rules and regulations of the operating system. What is the main use of operating system, how it is going to be implemented in the system, we have to explain in the operating system mechanisms and the policies. Next we have booting process. So what is mean by booting? Booting is nothing but loading the operating system from hard disk to RAM. So in this we have to use a term called post. Post means what? Power on self test. So this will be useful for motherboard, RAM as well as for the CPU. So in booting process normally we say BIOS setting. BIOS stands for basic input output system, controls all devices. Next we'll come back to the process definition. So process is nothing but what? Any task we are doing, that we call it as a process. Now process is nothing but program under execution. We have two kinds of processes: user processes, system processes. User processes will execute in the user mode, whereas system processes will execute in the kernel mode. Next we'll discuss about the attributes of the process. So we can say attributes of the process. Also we can also say process control block, PCB also we can say. So that is process ID. So that ID is nothing but identification number. Process state is nothing but current activity of the process. Process counter, sorry, program counter is nothing but address of the next instruction to be executed. Next, list of devices which are used in the process, general purpose registers, and the priority. To control the process, we have a PCB, that is nothing but process control block. So process control block information block to the controlling of the process. So for each and every process there will be a process control block. Consider P1 is here, we have a process control block. We have process control block for P2. So this process control block is different, this process control block is different. Why? Because this contains the process ID and how much memory is required, when it is started, when it is to be ended. Information related to P1 will be in this process control block. But P2 contains what? This process control blocks contains related to P2. That means for each and every process there is a separate process control block. So this is an important question for the academics, and we'll see the next topic. So this is a process control block, and some little information regarding the process control block here. It is created and maintained by the operating system. Every process has own process control block. It is reside in the main memory, that is RAM. PCBs are linked by the linked list data structure. PCB for new process, that we used a fork system call, and normal process is same. Next and very most important topic, that is process states. So basically we have 5 states in a process, that is new, ready, run, exit and block. When a process comes to new, from new to it moves to ready, from ready to it moves to run, from run it may go to exit or it may go to block. So if it may go to block, then it again goes to ready and again run. Clear? Now what the terms we are using, I'll explain you in the next. Next we have multi-programming. So in this multi-programming, we have two types of multi-programming. So multi-programming means what? More than one program is going to execute by the operating system. That means 2 or more processes are running at the same time. So we can implement that in 2 methods. So one is non-preemptive, one is preemptive. Non-preemptive means a process releases the CPU when after termination. So one process is completed, then only the other process is going to start. That is non-preemptive case. So preemptive case will be useful in multitasking, time sharing. That means what? Process releases the CPU when after termination of input-output event occur, or timeout occur, or priority occur. Based on the situation, the process has to leave the operating system and will be given to the other processes, that we call it as a preemptive case. Clear? So in a non-preemptive case, we have a drawback, that is called what? Starvation. This is for preemptive means what? Forcibly stopping the currently execution process, CPU allocated for the specific time. So for example, there is a process P3, P2, P1. There I am considering 3 processes. Now I am explaining the process state diagram. So in this, first new state is there. So this new state contains currently at a time T1, these 3 processes are in the new state. Now we will use a long-term scheduling algorithm to make the processes moves from new state to ready state. In the ready state, all these 3 processes are entered into the ready state. In this ready state, we have a short-term scheduling algorithm. This short-term scheduling algorithm selects the processes based on the chosen algorithm, and one of the three processes will be moved to the run state. From this run state, if any input output event occurred, for example, I am taking P2. So P2 is moving to here. Now from P2, if any input output event occur, this P2 will be moved to the block state. If any input output event is not occurred, P2 will execute the process and it will be going to the exit state. Consider P2 have input event occurred, so P2 is going to block state. So P2 is in block state. This will be in the block state only. If the block is suspended, so it goes to the suspended block. That means what? If this block state contains more number of processes, if the memory is not there for the block state to hold the processes, it will give the sum of the processes to the suspended block state. From this suspended block state, it will go to the suspended ready. From the suspended ready to ready. That means what? In the ready state or block state, if the memory is not sufficient to have the processes, some of the processes will be taken out from the block state to suspended block, or from the ready state also, if the space is not here, some of the processes are taken from the ready state to suspended ready state. If a process is coming to the suspended block state, it will choose the medium term scheduling algorithm. If any event occurred, the process will move to the suspended block to suspended ready, then suspended ready to the ready. Again, dispatcher will take the selection of the processes and it will move to the ready state. So this process will be repeated until the process completed, then after it going to exit state. Next we have here we have three schedulers: long term scheduler, short term scheduler, medium term scheduler. Long term scheduler responsibility is what? Create and responsible for shifting from secondary memory to main memory. Short term scheduler means what? Ready state to running state, and dispatcher does context switching. Medium scheduler means what? Swapping from secondary memory to main memory and vice versa. That means suspending ready processes. Next we have process synchronization. It is implemented by making a process to wait until another process performs an appropriate action on the shared data. When two or more processes, consider P1, P2. So these P1, P2 two processes are using a variable X. So this is a global variable. So P1 is using X so that P2 cannot use, so that P1 can perform the task on X variable very happily without having any disturbances. That we call it as process synchronization. That means what? Whenever you are using common data between some processes, one process is using shared data such that no other process should access that data, so that the process are in synchronization. So next we have a critical section problem. So in a critical section problem, here while condition is true, entry section, exit section. Critical section means what? Modifying the common variable or shared data. Whatever the variable is shared, that will be used for a process in a entry section and in a exit section. When a P1 is entering into the critical section means what? It has to inform to the all other processes that I am going to use the common data until I exit. So this we call it as a critical section. So next we have solutions or implementation for the critical section problem, that is mutual exclusion, progression and bounded waiting. So these are the three solutions for the critical section problem. Next we have semaphores. So semaphores are nothing but these are the signals provided by the simple means of cooperation between two or more processes. Now we already explained you the critical section problem, that is process synchronization. P1 want to use a variable X. So what we have to do? P1 want to send a signal to the P2 that I am going to use a variable X. So that signal we call it as a semaphore. So in this semaphore we have two variables, that is sem signal S, sem wait S. So here we have to transfer the signal preemptive, receive the signal through S. So whatever the signal you pass, that we call it as a SEM signal. For example, if you want to receive a signal from other processes, we call it as a SEM wait. So it is represented by P or V. Now here we have three rules for that is non-negative values is assigned to S and same weight. So if you are passing same weight, we have to decrement the value in S. If it becomes negative, process gets blocked, otherwise the continues. Same signal, incrementation in S. So if you are passing a signal, we have to say plus. That means whatever the value S contains, you have to say plus plus. If you want to receive a signal, whatever the value of S, we should decrementation. Same weight means decrementation, same signal means incrementation. If a value of the S becomes less than 0, then the process is unblocked. Whatever the process is blocked by the same weight, that will be unblocked with the help of the same signal. So this solution will be useful in the bounded buffer problem, reader writer's problem, dining philosopher's problem, Peter solution problem. Next and very most important concept, that is the deadlock. So in the deadlock means what? For example, this is a car, we have here car 1 and this is a car 2. So there is only one way. So this car is moving in this direction, this car is moving in this direction. If the two cars are using the same path, there will be a chance of occurrence of an accident. Similarly, if the two processes are going to use the same variable at the same time, so there will be a chance of occurrence of a deadlock. That means there will be a problem for two processes. The values of the two processes are not equal. The two processes are not going to complete the task. That we call it as a deadlock. So when the deadlock is occurred, we have to check the four conditions hold simultaneously. So if any one of the condition is satisfied, then that means it has a deadlock. So what is the four conditions? The first one is mutual exclusion. Only one process can hold resources at a time. Hold and wait. So P1 is holding a resource R1 and waiting for R2, and which is holded by P2. Non-preemptive. Operating system follows non-preemptive algorithm. Resource will not taken by other processes forcibly. So if P1 is using by the operating system, you should not take out that process P1 from the operating system forcibly. That we call it as a non-preemptive. Next we have a circular wait. Circular wait means what? P1 is holding R1, P2 is holding R2, P3 is holding R3, P4 is holding R4, and P1 is waiting for R2, P2 is waiting for R3, P3 is waiting for R4, P4 is waiting for R1. So we have a deadlock in a circulation manner. Next we have methods for handling the deadlock. So if you have a deadlock, how we can avoid that? So that is deadlock prevention and deadlock avoidance. Prevention means what? Precaution. So deadlock రాకుండా precaution తీసుకోవాలి. What the chances are there to avoid the deadlock is deadlock avoidance. Now first we'll see deadlock prevention. So deadlock prevention means, it means placing the restrictions on the resource request. If a process is requesting some resources, so first we have to hold that process whether the resources are free or not, which are requested by the particular process. If the resources are free, then only allocate, so that you will not get a problem. So first, mutual exclusion, only for the non-shareable resources. Next, preventing hold and wait, request all the resources before starting the execution, or if any process will request the new resources only when it has none. For example, P1 is requesting for 10 resources. If the 10 resources are free, then only allocate these 10 resources for P1. If the 10 resources are not free, then no need to allocate any resource to the process P1. For example, P1 is holding 10 processes and it need later on it need 2 more processes. So first what we have to do? First process P1 has to release the 10 resources completely, then ask 12 resources again. That we call it as a preventing hold and wait. Next what? Preventing non-preemption. currently holding resources are preempted, that is implicitly released. That means 10 processes are released. The process restart only when it regain its old and new processes. When the process P1 is going to start, after releasing these 10 resources, you can take previous 10 plus new 2. Old becomes 12 resources. Next we have preventing circular wait. So we should avoid the circular wait condition. If any resource is requesting, if any process is requesting new resource, first we have to check if the resource is allocated to the particular process, then there is a chance of occurrence of a circular wait or not. If the circular wait is not there, then only allocate the resource to the particular process. Then avoid the circular wait. Both are same only. Next we have deadlock avoidance. So the deadlock avoidance can be done by using the wait for graph technology. Wait for graph mechanism. So we have single instance and multiple instance. So the single instance can be solved with the help of the resource allocation graph. If we have multiple instances, that we can apply the Banker's algorithm. Next we have request edge, allocated edge. If the edge is in this way, Pi gives Rj, that means what? Pi is requesting Rj. This edge we call it as the request edge. If the resource is allocated to Pi, that means Rj is allocated to Pi, then we call it as assignment edge. Right? So we have a special video on the Banker's algorithm. Please watch this video in my operating system playlist. Why? Because it is a big topic, so I cannot explain you in this video. Please, for Banker's algorithm, watch my previous video. Next we have deadlock detection. So this deadlock detection can be solved with the help of the wait for graph. Next we have deadlock recovery. So deadlock recovery can be done in two ways. Deadlock recovery means what? Already we have taken a precaution. We avoided the deadlock, but the deadlock is occurred. So when the deadlock is occurred, first we have to detect by using wait for graph. That means which processes has the deadlock, we have to find out. After finding the deadlock, for example, consider P1, P2 have the deadlock. So what we have to do? Either process termination. Either you terminate P1 or you terminate P2. Next, resource preemption. Either terminate the resources of P1 or terminate the resources of P2 so that the deadlock will be avoided, detected. And in the resource preemption, we have three problems. What is selection of victim process and rollback and starvation. We have three problems in the resource preemption. So this deadlock detection will be, I explained in a video which is available in operating system playlist of my YouTube channel. Please go for that. Next we have a main memory management. So in this memory management we have first swapping. So let us discuss about the swapping. In this before swapping, logical address, physical address. Logical address generated by the CPU, that we call it as a virtual address. Virtual address is nothing but imaginary address. Physical address is nothing but actual address which is generated by the operating system. Now swapping is nothing but when a process is in the, so this operating system is in the main memory, these processes are in the secondary memory. So the processes must be moved from, main memory is very short, so we'll move the processes from secondary memory to main memory. So these processes will transfer from one memory to another memory by using a swapping method. So when we swap the two processes, the addresses may be changed. Why? Because these process address are generated by the CPU, that we call it as a logical address. So the processor's address in the main memory is called as physical address. So here next we have memory, continuous memory allocation. So in the continuous memory allocation we have fragmentation. Fragmentation is nothing but dividing the memory blocks of that. Now main memory number of fixed size blocks. So in this fixed partition, the main memory is going to divide the fixed size of blocks. The disadvantage is what? Internal fragmentation. So in this memory, the blocks are divided into fixed size block. If the 50 KB is used here, the remaining 50 KB will be wasted. So it supports the multi-programming. Next we have dynamic partition. Dynamic partition is nothing but what? How much memory is required for a particular process, that much memory will be allocated. But if any free space is there between the two processes, look here, 500 KB is free. Now 200 KB is released, 300 KB released. Now this 500 KB is free. Now if a process 500 KB comes, that cannot fit into this. For example, here we have a process of 500 KB. Here 200 is free, here 300 is free. But if a 500 KB process, new process comes, so these two parts will not combine and have to store this 500. So here the memory will be pasted in the dynamic partition. This we call it as a external fragmentation. This external fragmentation can be solved by using the compaction. So compaction is used to overcome the problems of the external fragmentation. So in the compaction technique, first we see first fit, best fit, worst fit. So in the first fit, the first block will be selected for the compaction. Compaction is nothing but what? Different memory allocations are going to combine at one place. In best fit, smallest block is selected. In the worst fit, largest block is selected. Next we have paging. So paging is nothing but whatever the secondary memory processes are there, these processes are going to main memory. So instead of complete process at one place, we are going to divide the processes into blocks, and each process may go to the physical address translation and to the operating system. So each page of the secondary memory is same and each frame of the main memory in same. That is, page is equals to frame of non-continuous memory allocation. So here what is the problem in the continuous memory allocation? If the the process is 500 KB, you cannot going to combine. So what we'll do, we'll divide the processes into pages, and each page will go and will fit into the main memory. So process size, frame size equals to the page size. Now this is a diagram for the paging, and this is a page table. So from which page you are selecting, and that page will going to the main memory, and where it is storing, every information will be in this paging concept. So in this, disadvantages are internal fragmentation and access time is very high. And next and important concepts and damn sure question I expecting, this is the page replacement algorithms. So in the page replacement algorithms, the first one is FIFO, first in first out. So in the exam, if they may give 3 frames or 4 frames, or if they are not giving anything, just take 3 frames or 4 frames. So these are the pages that are going to be fit. So 2 is coming first, so 2 are allocating, next 3 is coming, 3 allocating, next 2 is coming. So already 2 is available in the frame, that we call it as a page hit. Next we have 1, 2, 3, 1. Next we have 5. So this 5 to be entered into the frame such that first page should be replaced. So in this frame, which number is came first? 2 is came first. So remove the 2 and enter into the 5. This process is going on until all the pages processes are completed. Next we have page fault. Page fault means what? For example, operating system searching for a page. If that page is not found in the main memory, then this we call it as a page fault. If a page fault is occurred, then the dispatcher will take the responsibility and searches in the secondary memory, and if that available, and it get into the main memory. Next we have optimal replacement algorithm. So this is the replacement of longest time interval for the next reference, far from right. So whichever element is far from the available processes in the frame, we have to consider first 2, next 3, already 2 is there, that we call it as a page hit. Next 1 is there. So look over here this side. So 2, 3, 1 out of these three numbers, which is far? So which is far? 2 is far, right? Now, but 1 is not there after this. So we should replace the 1 with the 5. So that is the optimal replacement algorithm. Next we have least recently used. Far from left. Whatever the technique we applied here, that is choosing right, here we have to choose the left. So replace the least recently used in the past. Now first 2, next 3, next 2, 3, already 2 is there, that we call it as a page hit. Next 2, 3, 1. Now the chance of 5 come. So now after 1, 2, 3, which is far from left, which is far? 3 is far, 1 is side only, 2 is just to 5 side only. Now 3, so 3 has to be replaced. That is the least recently used. Next we have scheduling criteria. So in the scheduling criteria, we have to know the terms average waiting time, average response time, CPU utilization, throughput, turnaround time. Now first we'll see first come first serve scheduling algorithm. So this first come first serve scheduling algorithm is a non-preemptive, and this is a difficult to implement for time sharing system. So how will implement? First come first serve. Which process come first, we have to give the importance to that process. After completing that process only, we have to start the next process, that we call it as a non-preemptive. Next we have shortest job first. That means which is having less time, give the importance to that particular process. In this shortest job first, we have two methods: shortest remaining time first, shortest path next. Next we have priority scheduling algorithm. So in this also preemptive case is there, non-preemptive case is there. So in this priority scheduling algorithm, each process will be given the priority, that means importance, like one first priority, second priority, third priority. Based on that priority, we have to execute the process. Now if you give the priority, we have called a problem called starvation. That means lowest priority process never gets into the operating system. So that problem we can solve with the concept of the aging. Aging is a technique of gradually increasing the priorities of the processes that wait in the system for the long time. Next we have round robin scheduling algorithm. So in this round robin scheduling algorithm, each and every process has a time quantum. So it is suitable for time sharing, but it only preemptive, and it first works the FCFS. So time quantum will be given like 2 seconds or 3 seconds, but which process came first, that process will be allocated 2 seconds first. Next we have storage structure. So in storage structure, we'll have a disk. In this disk we have tracks and sectors. So each platter we call this one. So seek time is nothing but moving to the particular head is moving to the particular track is known as seek time. Next latency time, after reaching to the particular track, we have to reach to the particular sector, that we call it as latency time. Next we have to transfer the data, that we call it as a transfer time. So in order to reduce the head moments, we have different kinds of scheduling algorithms that we have called first come first serve scheduling algorithm. So consider these are the cylinders. So the cylinders are in which order? So this is 98, 183, 37, 122, 14, 27, like that. So whichever order is comes, in that order we have to move the head, so that we'll have the total seek time. Will calculate the seek time. So which seek time is very less, that seek time will prefer. Next we have shortest seek time first. In shortest seek time first, so out of all, which is the first, that means difference between each and every seek time will be considered. So we have a initial cylinder first. So like 53, any number can be taken, 53, 55, 60, any number. So with that number we have to check over. So this 53 is near to 98 or 183 or 37 or 120. So which is having short distance, that we have to calculate. Consider from 53, 65 is, consider this is a 65. So we have 65 here. From 65 we have to check before number and after number. So 65 after we have 67, before 65 from the available numbers we have 37. So which number is near to 65, or 37 or 67? So 67 is that. So we have to move in that direction. Now from the 67, so which number is near? 37 is near or 98 is near? 37 is near. So we have to move to 37. From 37, which number is near? So we have to move left and right. So which is near, that we have to move. That is the shortest seek time first. So initial head position is considering 65, next to 53, next to 65, next to 67. It may cause the starvation problem of some of the requests. Next we have scan scheduling algorithm. So in this scan scheduling algorithm moves towards the one direction. Once it reached the 0, then it moves to the opposite direction. So from 53, whatever the directions may be, this we have lowest of 53, this we have highest of 53. So whichever the direction, either this or that, any direction it will take, and it moves the one direction request, and again it starts the another direction. If it moves in another direction, if any number comes before this direction, so it will not go for back the other direction. For example, now the current head is here, so this is at 65. Now a process coming with the new request, so that is the head position at 62. So it is not going back, again it travel in the same direction. After reaching to this end, if at 62 arrives, then it will go for the 62 in the next turn only. So this is the drawback of the scan scheduling algorithm. So this is a scheduling algorithms. And last we have a short topic, that is disk management. So in disk management we have disk formatting, boot block, and bad blocks, and the accessing methods, index, sequential file method. Next we have directory structures. So how the going directories are going to implement, like drive, C drive, E drive, F drive, like we divide that. And next we have three types of directory levels: single level directory, two level directory, and tree structure directory, and acyclic directory. Okay, so just this is I'm giving a brief description about the complete syllabus of the operating system. So next we have RAID structures. We have 6 levels of RAID structure, and that's it. And last we have file system implementation, volume control block, boot control block, and next we have free space management, that is bit vector. So 0 and 1 block, bit 1 is there, that means free, 0 is there, the data is presented in that. So we have different types of methods. Next we have linked list, grouping, and counting. So all these are the free space management techniques. So thank you for watching my videos.